Host Mark Marquette. We're broadcasting live from the American Space Museum studios inside the American Space Museum, excuse me, there, as we're excited to have you on a Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. Beautiful green screen here of something that was a couple years ago that looks all finished. That is the new yes, Marty. Thank you. Marty Winkham, my co producer, chose that. That is the construction of the bridge going over Kennedy Space Center on the 405, taken from the observation fifth floor of our sponsor today. And let me go backwards with the sponsors there, Marty. There we go. Hyatt Place. Hyatt Place, definitely our home away from home. We've done 4 Shuttle Fest events there. Our next memorabilia show, November 8th, is going to be there. And it's just a great place. Nick is now the gentleman running it. We had a great time with Dana and Robert when they were there. This is right on Route 1 as you're coming into town at the 405 overpass in Titusville there. The Boeing offices are over here on this side. So can't say enough about what great partners they've been. And Robert and Dana are no longer there. We love them and miss them. They really embraced our museum and helped us out a lot, as are the staff, Sarah and Nick, who replaced Robert and Dana, was eventually the GM there. So this is the observation deck at one of our Shuttle Fest, maybe Shuttle Fest 2. There's Scott Vongen, famous for being a backup astronaut to J.D. Bartow and Sam Durrance on the Astro missions. Hey, in the background there, who do I see? I see Steve Yoakams in the back there, Marty. That's me, can tell by the bald spot. And Gabriel and his wife Jennifer, newlyweds, are on a honeymoon of sorts in Ecuador, where they both have a birthday. I think Gabriel's birthday is the 4th, in fact, and Jen's birthday is this week. So they're at Galapagos Island. Gabriel, of course, our executive director of our U.S. Space Walk of Fame Foundation. But this is getting off the elevator. The windows are to the right to look out and see a rocket launch there. And I've seen several of them up there. Mark Usiak took his his wide angle lens, and photographed a morning launch, as that is looking to the east. And I recognize our favorite star up there to the right. So really a good perk to this hotel. Of course, all hotels, Marty, go up and down in rates during the season, but right now a hotel room there is about $159, $169. We'll get them for $139. Those of you wanting to stay there during in November 8th. We'll start advertising that over the weekend, hot and heavy. And but this will shoot up to $400 a night during the peak in March and April. That's why we've moved Shuttle Fest to June, is the rates can be quite high, and they can't because of the tourism industry here. So Hyatt Place, thank you for sponsoring the American Space Museum Stay Curious video podcast. They are a great partner, and we look forward to having many events there. We hope that you become familiar with this property during some of our events, or just during one of your vacations, or maybe business travel. I drive by it almost every day, Marty, going home in Port St. John, south of this, and parking lot's always full. So, well, we got a special person to celebrate today. This is Robert Henry Lawrence Jr., and we usually don't celebrate astronauts who passed away, but because of some circumstances going on, namely my friend Art Edwards has finished his book, African Americans on the Space Coast. And we are going to celebrate him having a book publishing event here in about 3 weeks. We're looking at a couple dates, probably the October, the third weekend in October, maybe. But we're putting this together fast and furious. But Robert Lawrence was the first African American astronaut and is part of, Marty, one of those what ifs. What if this had happened and not happened? And this man who lost his life in a plane crash as a aviator in the Air Force, not his own fault either, uh, died way too young at age 32. Okay, but born October 2nd, 1935 in Chicago, Illinois. And part of what I like about Stay Curious, Marty, is I get to learn as much as our viewers about some space history because I've got to dig it up. I've got a Wikipedia article here. I copied a couple other things, looked at real quickly to put a thumbnail sketch of this man's life together uh, because this is a big what if he had lived. He would have been part of, and what if this had happened and that? Well, let's just talk about that a minute. Born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, Lawrence attended um, school there. He went to Bradley University. He liked chemistry. That was his forte. Got a bachelor's in chemistry. Um, Joined the Omega Psi-Phi fraternity and distinguished himself as a cadet commander in the Air Force ROTC. And we hope to get that fraternity involved. Get a lot of purple and gold here, as that's the black fraternity. And they call it something else now, but it was the Omega Psi-Phi fraternity. So he went in the Air Force, and at age 21, became a pilot. Then he got more education at the Ohio State University, getting his doctorate degree, Marty, in chemistry. And you wonder what a doctorate degree thesis might look like in 1965. Well, here is Lawrence's PhD, physical chemistry from the Ohio State. His thesis was, quote, "The mechanism of the tritium beta ray induced exchange reaction of deuterium with methane and ethane in the gas phase." Something everybody wants to know. But doctor of chemistry. And so he was selected in 1967 as a manned orbiting laboratory astronaut of the manned orbiting laboratory program of the Air Force. And there he is with one of the muckety mucks there with the Titan rocket that was going to launch at the top the MOL, basically spy space station. He did go to Edwards Air Force Base Test Pilot School. He also was selected as an astronaut, mostly being cited for accomplishments and flight maneuver data that contributed greatly to the development of the space shuttle. And though space shuttle wasn't approved or anything back then, what he did with X-15 rocket data and F-104 starfighter gliding techniques, unpowered, was the template for the shuttle returning as a glider from orbit. So here is the first three African American astronauts: Ron McNair on the left, Guy Bluford, and Marty. I'm blanking there.
Me too. He's just here.
Yeah, we talk about him all the time. Somebody's going to help me out there. Bill, not Bill.
No.
Fred Gregory. Fred O'Gregory. Yeah, Fred Gregory. We've met Fred Gregory many times. He's a very amiable guy. This picture would not have been taken if Bob Lawrence had been the first African American to go to space. And that could have happened in the 1968-69 era if the manned orbiting laboratory, that is this right here, saw to its fruition. There were 18 astronauts chosen in that group. They were Air Force astronauts. Bob Crippen was one of them. I got a picture of Bob. There's what another artist's conception of a space station looked like. There was an orbiting outpost. This is my favorite here, this astronaut here, like fishing off the side there. He's doing some experimental remote controlled something going on there. Look at the hurricane they got going on there. Yeah, like we wish that's the way hurricanes look. There's Bob Crippen. The MOL spacesuit was blue, like Air Force blue. Of course, this was found in a locker at Cape Canaveral, and actually put at the Science Museum in Oklahoma City is where this ended up. Lawrence integrated into the astronaut corps of Air Force people for a clandestine military situation called the Man Orbiting Laboratory. All right, there's a picture right there. We've had many, many programs on it. And Don Peterson, one of those astronauts who was from Mississippi, a very racist state in those days, said, perhaps I've been more fortunate than the others in the opportunities. No, I'm not saying that. Peterson said, I can't speak for all the people in Mississippi, but he was not reluctant to work with a black man. And that was strong words back in 1967 during the civil rights things going on in our country and just starting to simmer and brew up into a big problem in 1968 and 69. On the race relations, Lawrence answered if his selection was historic for the black community. And he said, no, I don't think so. It's another one of those things that we look forward to in civil rights, normal progression. Hear, hear. So tried to draw him into the race controversy back then, and he wasn't going to have any of it. Well, at age 32, preparing for flights to space, this is in 1967, so the mole program was still going on. He lost his life in a plane crash at Edwards Air Force Base. There he is right there. On December 8th, 1967, he was flying backseat in an F-104 as the instructor pilot for flight test trainee Major Harvey Royer, who was learning the steep descent glide technique. He made the approach but flared too late. Plane hit the ground. Main landing gear failed. It caught fire, rolled over. Royer ejected upward and survived with major injuries. And in the back seat, the ejection seat ejected sideways as the airplane had turned, killing Lawrence instantly. He was still strapped to his seat. And he left a wife and a child. And had he lived, he most likely would have been among the mole astronauts who became astronaut group 7 after the mole's cancellation, all of whom flew on the space shuttle. So he would have been one of the earliest space shuttle flyers, as was Guy Bluford in this picture here. Guy Bluford in the middle. STS-8 was August 1983 on there. So sad but true story of a great American, a great aviator. Many things honor him around the country. Put that up there. And the 13th Northrop Grumman Cygnus spacecraft, which one is docked right now to the space station, it was named after Robert Lawrence. And let me take that off there. And in 2020, NASA included Lawrence in a group of 27 pioneering African American, Hispanic, and Native Americans by naming asteroids after them. And his alma mater, Bradley University, has an art installation commemorating Lawrence that was installed this past spring. So now you know a little about Mr. Robert Lawrence. He is immortalized out at the Space Mirror at Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex. And we plan on talking about him when Art Edwards is here, an African American who wrote a book about his experience at Kennedy Space Center. And Art's been on the show several times. He was a remote manipulator systems engineer with the Canadians, working on the arm that was so important to the success of the shuttle. So hope y'all enjoyed that. And Shuttles of October. Yep, it's Rocktober 2nd already. So Mark's going to be talking about some shuttles of the month. because over 290 Americans flew on the shuttle, uh, and it's just an amazing vehicle, and the people that did it are still around wanting to share it with you. So, overview of the month of May, or month of October. I go May, I hear, where is my overview? I'm going to find it because I set it right over here where I am all prepared, of course. Stay in sync there, Mark. We got 3, 6, 9, 12 beautiful shuttles, okay? And we've got Columbia led the field with 3, and Atlantis has 3, Challenger twice, and Discovery 4, and Endeavour no flights in the month of October. Okay, so what do you remember most? Which ones did you go and see a launch of there? Of course, what probably sticks out is the biggie of the month is John Glenn. Okay, age 77, going up on October 29th in 1998. And we're going to talk about 2 shuttles that had their missions canceled with interplanetary spacecraft because of this Challenger disaster. But those interplanetary spacecraft were supposed to have a dangerous second stage on them that had 2 missions, patches and all, canceled. We'll talk about those. But those 2 canceled missions were flown in the month of October. And of course, I'm talking about Magellan deployed on STS-41, right, the third one in up there with Richard Richards and Bob Cabana in control of the ship, and that was Discovery. And STS-34, second one in on the center row, with our good friend Mike McCulley, his one and done in 1989 there, deploying the Galileo spacecraft. But those 2 spacecraft were going to be deployed in a much different way. Stay curious as we talk about that. 12 shuttles. Pam Melroy has 3 flights in the month of, wow, she has all her 3 flights in the month of October. 112 pilot there, 92 pilot there, and the one she commanded was 120. So this is Pambo month. How about 41G and Cripps' second command in 1984 with Kathy's spacewalk and Sally's second trip to space? We'll talk about those in a minute. And there are 5 missions with 2 women on them, okay? And that's a cool thing to always share in our months of shuttles. So let's get out the book here of patches and give you a little art lesson with the STEAM, the STEM, we call it STEAM as we call it in art there. 51J, okay. The 5 means the year 85, fiscal year, though it was launched in November 84. What? Wasn't launched in November. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at 51J. Okay, 51J, HIJ. That's where the J's for, like D, E, F, G, H, I, J, although those even got messed up. And this, the 5 still means fiscal year 1985. It was launched in October 85. Fiscal year goes from October to October in the government. That's why we got this shutdown going on here, because of the calendar of the government ticking. October is their start. The 50 and 1 means it was launched at Kennedy Space Center. 5 is for 85 to the accountants. 1 launched at Kennedy Space Center. If there had been a 2 there, which they intended, it had been Vandenberg at Slick 6. And the J is A, B, C, D, sort of. The 51J mission insignia, designed by Atlantis' first crew, pays tribute to the Statue of Liberty and the ideas it symbolizes. This was the first maiden flight of Atlantis. The historical gateway figure bears additional significance for astronauts Carol Bobko, commander, Ronald Grabe, pilot, both New York natives, so they may have had a good hand in choosing this, okay? And there's an astronaut's name don't come up much, William Pales, okay? I believe he was a one and done. Robert Stewart had he did an untethered EVA, the second man to do that. Of course, the first Bruce McCandless, everybody remembers. And David Hilmers, he is in the Hall of Fame, I believe, up there in the upper. So here they are. There's the launch. That'd have been cool to see a Saturn V laying out there in front of the VAB with a mock-up of a shuttle, I believe is what that was. Beautiful launch there at 10 in the morning on October 7th. And there's not much to talk about because this was the second Department of Defense mission. So all of these men were sworn to secrecy and couldn't talk about it. Even pictures inside were limited to things that wouldn't tip off in the background what they were doing there. But there's the obligatory shot in space. They had no yellow or no orange pumpkin suits in those days, okay? They just flew up in flight crew clothes, which meant a lot of pockets and Velcro and a comfortable shirt. And they would wear that helmet that looked like a football helmet in a way, or a go-kart or race driving helmet, mostly for the noise suppression, is what I've been told. But we did get some pictures that they could show us of the thin blue line that keeps us all alive here on planet Earth as Earthlings. So that was the first October 3rd, first of 12 missions launched. And then let's talk about this fabulous mission, STS-41G, okay, in 1984. So it's the 84 fiscal year. All right, these are in order of calendar. All right. And this was right after STS-9. They adopted this until STS-25 was the fateful 51L. And after that, they went to the numbering system, thank God, because it was just too confusing for people. And people who sort out patches will put logically the 4 and the 5 and the 6, because they had 6 fiscal years they tracked up to put them up with the 50s, 60s, and 40 launches in there. So what is this one about? Let me go back in our wonderful book here and tell you. This is an easy symbolic patch. The 41G mission signifies and focuses on its 7 crew members, the first mission ever to exceed 6. The U.S. flag and the unity symbol known as the astronaut pin. That's the gold star with the orbit around it and 3 traces to space. The pin design in the center shows a trio of trajectories merging in infinite space, capped by a bright shining star, and encircled by an elliptical wreath denoting orbital flight. That's what I said. The artwork was done by Patrick Rawlings, okay? There's some more detail there. There's some stars there that signify probably some meaning. This was before we lost the Challenger astronauts. This was an Earth radiation budget satellite, and they had a lot of different what they call ride shares. We call them ride shares today. The IMAX camera was taken up there for the 3rd time. We had, and some really, there is the launch of it was at 7:03 a.m., right before sunrise. Okay, you're looking to the east there. So the sun was blocked by the deck of clouds there, and so it looked like night. And that's one of the satellites they deployed on the right. And this gives you the group cargo configuration of all of those little experiments that they took up. They didn't have one big satellite to deploy, which was the wheelhouse of the shuttle at the time, but this was a space mission to study different aspects that you could only do in space, and this is the bedrock for what's going on the International Space Station the last 25 years. There's our crew and one of the most famous pictures there of shuttle era. You have in the back Paul Scully Power, who from Canada, who refused to shave his beard. He said, "I'm not going to shave it because I'm going to show you I can wear the rescue mask without the beard hair impeding that." So he was the first astronaut to go to space with a beard. There's Bob Crippen, who I believe just turned 88 years old, double snowman. Beside him in the upper right is Mark Garneau, who died of a heart attack, a fatal heart attack, about 4 or 5 months ago. I talking to a Canadian journalist here, Marty, who didn't know that. We have Mark Garneau's handprints, and I wanted to show them to him because they need to be in Canada, not in our museum. He was the director of transportation, I think, in Canada after being an astronaut. And he didn't know that and almost was moved to tears because he said, "I had a medical emergency for 2 months and was out of touch when he passed away." John McBride, we're going to talk about Big John, the pilot there. His one and unfortunately done, but then he did something much better for NASA and the space program. We'll share that in a minute. There you got uh, Sally Ride on her second ride to space. Look at that big smile on her face. And Kathy Sullivan, her first flight. Everybody was rookies except for Crip and Sally Ride. Yeah, Sally Ride and Crippen were the only two. And of course, she flew with him on STS 7. And then you have 5 rookies there. And Kathy Sullivan, first American woman to walk in space, and David Leesma is on her shoulder there. David Leesma, talked to him at an event or two. Really a nice guy. So this was the first space flight in the history of humankind. For what, Marty? First space flight. What do you think? First space flight in the history of human.
Launching 2 women.
There you go, brother. That's it. 2 women to space there. Take that, Russia. All right, they've only orbited 5 women in their entire space program, where we've orbited over, I think, 60 of the 83 that have gone to space. So a great mission, and that leads me to always share my opportunity when I can share a little bit about this great man and all that he meant to the American Space Museum. Oh, sorry, there, I jumped the gun there. There's the 2 women in space. That was my build up to that. And what do they have? I think they've got a Mars rover or something there they're playing with there. But there's the first 2 witnesses, Kathy Sullivan and Sally Ride. We lost Sally Ride to cancer almost 20 years ago. Kathy Sullivan later went on. She's an oceanographer, big scuba diver, for science. And she headed the oceanography division of our government under the Obama administration. And so she's somebody, we have her handprints here. Now I can say, it's always an opportunity I have to share about John McBride. I do. Here is one of the most classic photos ever taken out at Kennedy Space Center. He was the ambassador of astronauts for over 20 years. He was the go-to astronaut, now taken over by Winston Scott. And I know Winston a little bit and talk to him privately sometimes. You can't believe every day the phone calls that come in for an astronaut to do something. And John McBride tried to not turn down any of them, as Winston does. But you have to, because you got to have a private life there. But what a great shot that Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex used for their publicity for many years when Big John was the man out there. There's a great picture I took of him that's about 7 years ago at a fundraiser we did. And he knew he was having some dementia, talked to us about that. There he is with his son, John. And John, God bless you and thank you for your support. I know you miss your dad dearly, and we're here at the Space Museum to keep his memory alive. He was on our board of directors for 2 decades, helped us raise all kinds of money for Spaceview Park, and was always there, like Mike McCulley also helping our museum. And there's a whole bunch of Apollo astronauts, but boy, McCully and this man helped us a lot. And little John, you're doing the same, and we appreciate you. He's always buying stuff in our auctions to support our nonprofit, and you make a good board member for us one day. So we'll talk to you about that. And I look at John loves our little John. Marty told me that after Shuttle Fest 4 that it was the best medicine he could get because he was having a tough time. His dad passed away a year ago. And so we love the McBrides, and we're going to carry on Big John's legacy. Of course, I got to throw in one of the craziest pictures I've ever been involved in at that event 7 years ago, where I was taking these pictures. We had 5 astronauts there. I said, I want you guys a picture with all of you, because I was taking pictures of them with our guests. And they all got stoic and put their hands in front of them like the naked ape pose, we call that. And I said, no, I want something silly off the... So they all like pulled out a gun, Marty, like they're going to shoot me. John had put rabbit ears over my head there, and I don't know if we had a frame of that, but that's the late Sam Durrance. To the left, Winston Scott, John McBride, Mike McCully, and Bob Springer there. All outstanding men that have helped our museum way before I was here. And I was very privileged to have a picture like this made with these heroes of our space age. And one of the final appearances Big John made was out at our astronaut memorial in January, the last Sunday of January. This one would have been in 2014, 13. This is probably 2012. Okay. This is the one Nicole Stott talked at. John's got a goatee there, and Terry White had shoulder surgery. There's Tim Gagnon, and that's little John there, and he had a broken arm, and yet he's trying to take a selfie there. And I kind of had a wide angle lens I see on there, Marty. I just like how the palm trees and the sky in the background accentuates this. And that was one of Big John's last appearances. So occasionally I like showing you all pictures of behind the scenes there, why Marty and I are so privileged to be part of this fabulous museum, not only sharing its artifacts, but sharing with you the people who made America's space age what it is today, the greatest in the world, and we need to keep it that way. Okay, we go to segue to that, I teased you a little bit with 2 space missions that never happened. And we're probably glad they didn't, because there was some messed up thinking on this, some people would tell you, okay? And Marty, but first, do we have any comments before I go into this? I wasn't looking at comments on my phone. The phone's over here. That's why I want to go. Anything pertinent to bring up?
No.
How many corrections do I have so far?
Okay. Let me find it again. Tom Usack is saying Paulus wasn't an astronaut. He was an Air Force payload specialist, but he's still considered an astronaut.
Who's that?
Paulus, I forget what mission that was.
Oh yeah, yeah,
but he was still an astronaut.
Yeah.
It's just like Charlie Walker and the others.
Yeah. Why don't you? Yeah. Okay. We understand that, Tom, for sure. I'm not distinguishing who gets an astronaut pin, but since Tom brought it up, to get an astronaut pin, you have to be part of an astronaut class. Okay, like the group they just chose. All right, and if you are not in an astronaut class, you're a payload specialist that went up to tend to a scientific instrument that an astronaut didn't want to waste his time with, is what it boiled down to. And that's why Charlie Walker flew 3 times, was because Charlie was a payload specialist. And when I asked him on air if he got on Stay Curious one year, where did he keep his astronaut pin, in the sock drawer or his wife's jewelry box? He looked at me like I just kicked him in the shin. He says, well, I didn't get one. I go, what do you mean? He says, payload specialist didn't get one. All right. And yet he went 3 missions in 18 months, risking his life to run an electrophoresis machine that he invented that separated molecules of blood and substances in ways that have helped science immensely, because a regular group astronaut did not want to sit there and tend to that machine. All right, he wanted to do more exciting things than that, like walk in space or do the robotic arm or something like that. So yes, so a lot of those are one and done. J.D. Bartow's like that. Sam Durant's was one of those like that. And I talked to several astronauts about it, and uh, uh, there's only one exception I've heard, and I'm not going to bring him up, Marty, but he was a one and done astronaut, and he don't think Charlie Mars deserves to be called an astronaut or be in the Hall of Fame.
Charlie Walker.
Charlie Walker. Who did I say? Charlie Mars?
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie Walker deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, which he does because he's the first commercial astronaut. And when somebody told me that, I said, please tell that astronaut we only consider the opinions of those who's flown to space more than once. Twice. But anyway, it is a little controversial. We'll do a show on that again. We've hit it off and on. Thanks for bringing it up, Tom, that he was a payload specialist. That means they did not participate in a class from start to finish. But I'll bet your bottom dollar they went through just as much, rescue and stuff like that as anybody else out there. So yes, we're teasing you in the beginning with the title here that we're going to talk about Centaurs, okay? And let's see. Celentano's watching, Babcock, and Steve Jokums was not listening to what I was saying, apparently. I didn't say the current Cygnus is named Lawrence. I knew it was the 13th one launched. I didn't give you the year. It was 5 years ago. Yes, the one up there now is currently called Willie McCool. Thank you for telling us about that. The Columbia astronaut that was the pilot with the coolest astronaut name, obviously. And Dean Babcock says that his father attended Bradley and knew Mr. Lawrence. That's really cool. And hey, Keith Sewell, Doctor of Astronomy there. Good to see you watching. RG Jubilee, she's watching. And, oh, I see. We've got Dr. Sewell's dissertation there if you want to look that up. Thank you very much. So glad everybody's watching today and enjoying a good time. And you're going to, and many of you will go, I didn't know that. At least I hope a couple of you will go that out there when we talk about this mission. Okay, this is the logo for a flight that never flew, STS-61F, scheduled in 1986 or 85, scheduled actually for May 15th, 86. And you know what happened in January 86, the Challenger accident. So it was canceled when Challenger was destroyed earlier that year. The main objective of 61F was to deploy the Ulysses solar probe, okay, that STS-41 did in 1990 this month. And this was a solar probe that was going to slingshot around Jupiter and go into a polar orbit around the sun. That's why they have Jupiter on the logo there. It's a big red spot. That red spot's not that big on Jupiter. But to explore the north and south pole of the sun that have never been seen before. And the mission would have marked the first use of a Centaur G liquid-fueled payload booster, which also was to be used on the subsequent mission to send Galileo to Jupiter. Okay, now let's give you some info on this. Here's the astronauts. Fred Houck. Okay, now here's the other mission proposed. That's 41F or 61F, and this is 61G. Okay, the artwork for it shows the Earth with the payload leaving the Earth's orbit by a Centaur rocket using some gravity assist from Saturn and to go out to Jupiter. All right, and there's the crew there. She had Walker, Grabe, it would have been Walker's second flight, Graves' second. Norm Thagard was scheduled for this, Marty. We'll have to ask Thagard what he thinks about the Centaur engine. And Van Hoften, it would have been his third flight. So all veterans were going to fly this flight, okay? And then on this flight here, these would have all been veterans also, all on their second flight, except Rick Houck was on his third flight, okay? So, Chief of the Astronaut Office, who was, of course, the great John Young, what did he think about the Centaur fueling in a shuttle payload bay to rocket these interplanetary probes? He called the flights the Death Star flights, Marty. All right. That's what John Young called both these flights, of using, because of the payload being being flown by a liquid fueled Centaur rocket. We'll talk about in a minute. The flight was risky enough that Commander Houck gave his crewmates an option to leave the crew if they considered it to be too unsafe. Okay. And there's the astronauts there. Of course, Roy Bridges became a center director. And they're smiling there, as these guys are here. Okay. Of the crew of a second. Man, I forgot Thagard was part of this. And we've got Norm Thagard committed with our Shuttle Fest 5 for our NASA at Star City Saturday. So I'll be asking him about that. That'll be something cool to ask. But here, Centaur Shuttle had their own logo. Of course, the Centaur was the fabulous second stage of the Atlas rocket that did put hundreds of payloads into Earth and low Earth orbit and geosynchronous orbit for communications in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then it also sent probes like Surveyor to the moon, and Pioneer to Venus, Jupiter, Mariner to Mars. All right, a fabulous motor, and I forget who built it. That's bad of me. I think it was. And here it is, the payload that they were going to put on top of this. This is the Centaur G upper stage. All right. And we've had a couple programs on it. That's what it looked like. That's how big it was. That's what it would have been inside. Imagine that inside of the shuttle cargo bay. All right. This is out at Marshall where they tested it. Couple versions of it, the shuttle Centaur configurations. Well, what was so risky about it was liquid fueled. It had to be fueled right from the LUT, right, Marty? The launch umbilical tower and everything would have had to have fixtures drilled into the side of the shuttle. It was going to be used at Atlantis, okay, and then the other one was going to use Challenger. So they weren't going to dedicate one shuttle, but they would have had to configure something in the side of the shuttle to fuel it from the launch umbilical towers, and that was something that was scary. And keep it fueled, and the chance of it exploding, anything like that, was just insane to the engineers I talked to who worked on this. Everybody was very uneasy about this, and yet they still were going to make it happen. And maybe the Challenger disaster averted another disaster that would have happened with these people in space. That would have been horrible. So it never did happen, but now you know that bit of space history to share with you. What we did use was the a solid rocket motor, inertial upper stage, IUA, inertial, I forget the acronym, IUE, yeah, inertial upper stage engine is what that was called. They also had PAM motors, which were payload assist motor, that was a solid rocket that would burn and send. And this is the deploy of STS-41 in October 1989, okay, and on Atlantis there, that our friend Mike McCulley was pilot. Don Williams was the commander of that. So, watching that with Shannon Lucid, Chang Diaz, and Ellen Baker, all watching this. One of them took that picture there. All right, so there's your beautiful couple shuttles of the month of Rocktober, if you will. Hope you all enjoyed looking at this as you're out and about visiting and seeing these astronauts on there. Centaurs, I was going to say General Dynamics, and Convair built the Atlas. I wasn't sure there, Steve. Thank you. I wasn't sure if the General Dynamics had segued into another name at this time, but Convair and General Dynamics, two of the early legacy companies that we celebrate in our Cape Canaveral gallery there every day. So thank you all for watching today. We've got a whole week and weekend that we're going to have a little moonshine out there, Marty. And there, let me put my moonshine up there for you as I'm thanking Doug Forrest for watching, Robert Law, Dr. Keith Sewell, Tom Usiak, Mitch Rothman. Hello, Mitch at Man Space, Carlton Bailey, Tom Celentano, Dave Stangy, Steve Yoakum, R.G. Jubilee, and otherwise known as Rosa Lee, Dean Babcock, Elena Adhikari, and Mostly Parked is watching today. And we thank everybody for sharing and telling people that you got to check in once in a while, because I think some of you learned something you didn't know before, and some days I never know that I'm going to learn something new too, like I did a few facts about Robert Lawrence. I wondered if he was the pilot of the crash that killed him, but no, he was the trainer in the back seat there. So, so go out and look at that beautiful moon. You're seeing it during the daylight before it gets good and dark. Full moon is next Wednesday, I think. So we'll be out there getting some beautiful silvery moonlight, and I can't get enough of it. So enjoy that. Marty, thank you so much. Anything else that didn't catch my eye I need to apologize for or straighten out?
I think you got it all, Mark.
All right. Tomorrow we're going to have Eric Baker on the show tomorrow. Eric is a docent on Friday, and while he's here, we're going to let him do some Friday episodes. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the controversy, if there is any, of moving Orbiter Discovery OV-103 from the Udvar-Hazy Smithsonian facility in Washington, D.C. to Houston. What are the chances of that happening? Who do we know that might be against that? Well, one of them is Eric Baker, who wrote a letter to the editor of the Aviation Week in Space Technology, and we're going to have him share that with you. And there's also been an astronaut very vocal about not doing this. So we're going to look at that, and we'll look at the usual things in space history. And by the way, an early happy birthday tomorrow to the youngest moonwalker alive. Charlie Duke will be 90 years old tomorrow. Let that sink in for a minute. And it's also Kathy Sullivan's birthday tomorrow that we featured on STS. I already forgot, 41G. Yep, 41G. So, well, thank you all for watching today. Hope you join us tomorrow to see Eric Baker and talk about that idea to move Discovery. And we'll see who votes on that. We'll have a straw poll on that one tomorrow. Until then, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us. Thank you.